Okay, wow. We've got quite the collection of documents to dig into today.
Yeah.
Court filings, government reports, technical specs. We've even got some bits from the Mueller report itself.
This is going to be a deep dive for sure.
It's going to be a deep dive.
Into.
You seem to be fascinated by
Wow.
how law, technology, and politics all kind of intertwine.
They're all connected.
Especially when it comes to information. Who controls it, who uses it, how they use it.
Exactly.
So let's see what hidden stories we can uncover in all of this and what these documents tell us about power, secrecy, and
the limits of authority.
The limits of authority.
There's always more than meets the eye.
Always more than meets the eye, yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, so let's start with something that I think hits close to home for a lot of people.
I agree.
Juror privacy. These filings from the Roger Stone trial, they're really interesting because they include these declarations from jurors who are absolutely terrified.
Yeah, they're scared
of being harassed.
If their information gets out there.
Their questionnaires are made public.
Makes sense.
Now, it's understandable, right? Because they were under the impression that these questionnaires, where they had to share all sorts of personal details,
very personal things,
would be kept confidential.
Completely confidential.
Even from the lawyers.
Yeah.
And you can definitely understand their fear.
Sure.
I mean, the Stone case was so high profile.
High profile and very politically charged.
Yeah, there was so much scrutiny, so much potential for backlash.
Exactly.
This case really brings to light a much larger issue about juror safety and privacy.
Especially in cases that are...
Particularly in cases that grab the public's attention.
Right, that are...
Imagine the chilling effect if people are just afraid to serve on a jury. Honestly, because they're worried about being targeted.
Or harassed online.
You're harassed online, doxxed, all of that.
It could really undermine the whole system.
Really undermine the idea of a fair trial.
Yeah, like the foundation of our justice system.
And then you add in technology.
Right, where it's so easy to...
Which makes it so easy to dig up information about anybody.
Yeah.
And you have to wonder how jury selection is going to need to adapt in the future.
That's a great question.
I mean, could we see a move toward more anonymity for jurors?
Potentially.
Stronger legal protections against online harassment?
Yeah, maybe even new laws.
That's something to really think about.
Absolutely. This case raises some really important questions about how we protect jurors.
It does.
In this new digital age.
Let's switch gears now to something completely different.
Sure.
China's economic and technological ambitions.
All right.
This document called Mandate for Leadership lays out some really bold goals.
That's fascinating, isn't it?
It really is.
The chapter we're looking at, the author mentions that it was a collective effort. So it wasn't just one person's perspective.
Yeah.
And when you look at this section outlining China's goals, it's pretty striking.
Like what stands out to you?
Well, they're aiming to dominate traditional manufacturing, like they've been doing. But at the same time, they're pushing to become world leaders in these high-tech fields, like AI, advanced materials.
Oh, wow.
It's a two-pronged approach.
Ambitious.
Very ambitious.
What kind of impact would that have?
Well, you know...
On the global landscape.
On the global landscape.
Not even just from like an economic standpoint.
Right. It goes way beyond economics.
What else?
Well, if China succeeds in these areas, it could seriously challenge U.S. competitiveness. And it's not just about economic rivalry either.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that.
It has huge implications for national security.
Like what?
Think about cybersecurity, for example.
Yeah.
If China gains dominance in these emerging technologies, it could shift the balance of power globally.
Makes you think about all the ways technology is reshaping the world.
It really does.
It's not just about who makes the most money.
It's about who controls the future.
Who controls the future, yeah.
This document really underscores the importance of expertise in these critical fields. The ones that are going to determine economic and military strength in the years to come.
Speaking of national security, we have this excerpt here from 25010.pdf, and it details how the Department of Justice obtained communication records
Interesting.
of reporters from CNN, the New York Times, and the Washington Post.
Whoa, okay.
Now, it's important to note that the reporters themselves weren't the targets of this investigation.
So they were going after?
They were trying to find the sources of classified leaks.
But
by obtaining those records, didn't they risk creating this chilling effect on journalism?
Absolutely, because if sources think their conversations are going to be exposed, they're going to be much less likely to come forward.
And that
It creates a climate of distrust.
makes it harder for journalists to do their job.
Exactly, which is to hold those in power accountable.
Really important.
This case is a stark reminder of what can happen when the government overreaches. When it comes to press freedom.
All right, let's move on to something else now.
Sure.
The future of warfare.
Ooh, interesting.
This document, it's called RRL Technical Implementation Plan 2016-2020 Final.pdf.
Catchy title.
It outlines the Army's research priorities and personnel needs for the future.
So like a roadmap for...
It gives us a glimpse into some of the cutting-edge technologies that they're focusing on.
Like what?
Things like additive manufacturing.
Oh, 3D printing.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Multi-fidelity aerodynamic modeling.
That sounds complicated.
And then there are these human agent systems.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So let's break these down a little bit.
Yeah, let's do it.
Additive manufacturing.
You're printing, right?
3D printing. So how does that play into warfare?
Imagine being able to create custom parts or even weapons on demand.
Oh, on the battlefield.
Right there on the battlefield.
Yeah.
That would be a game changer.
It would completely revolutionize logistics and supply chains.
Yeah, no more waiting for parts to be shipped in.
Exactly.
Okay, what about this multi-fidelity aerodynamic modeling?
It's about improving the performance and efficiency of things like aircraft and missiles.
Got it.
It's a very complex field.
Yeah.
But think of it as creating these highly accurate simulations and predictions that allow for better designs and ultimately give you an edge in aerial combat.
Exactly.
And then there are these human agent systems.
That's the one I'm really curious about.
This is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
So imagine AI working hand in hand with human soldiers.
Like a partnership.
On the battlefield, making decisions together, coordinating complex actions in real time.
Wow, like in those sci-fi movies.
It really is like something out of a sci-fi movie.
It's mind-blowing how technology is transforming warfare.
Absolutely.
This document really paints a picture of what the future battlefield might look like. And it's both exciting and a little bit terrifying.
Okay, let's dive into a world of secrecy now.
Okay, I like where this is going.
SCIFs.
Sensitive compartmented information facilities.
Oh, those super secure rooms? Exactly. These documents, DCMA man-3301-088.pdf and IC tech specs for constant MGMT of SCIFs-V15.pdf.
Long titles.
They lay out these incredibly strict requirements for handling classified information.
So like how to build a SCIF and how to operate one.
Yeah, it's all about making them these impenetrable fortresses of information.
I bet the construction specs are fascinating.
They are.
Like what kind of stuff do they talk about?
Well, there's sound attenuation to prevent eavesdropping.
Wow, so you can't even hear what's going on inside.
Intrusion detection systems, of course.
Right, got to keep those spies out.
Restrictions on who can enter, particularly foreign nationals.
I can see why.
They really go to extraordinary lengths to ensure security.
No detail is too small.
No detail is too small.
It really shows how seriously they take protecting national secrets.
This whole world of espionage and cybersecurity.
High-stakes stuff.
That's a high-stakes game for sure.
And these documents give us a peek behind the curtain.
They do.
It's fascinating.
All right, up next.
Okay.
We have a brief excerpt from Fox vs.Dominion.pdf.
Oh, that's the one about the lawsuit, right?
Yes, it's about a defamation lawsuit against Fox News.
Right, I remember hearing about that.
And it revolves around this claim that Fox News knowingly broadcast false information about Dominion voting systems.
Specifically related to the 2020 election.
Right. This case raises some really important questions about the role of the media in a democracy and the potential consequences of spreading misinformation.
Especially during elections.
Exactly. It makes you think about the impact of those claims.
Yeah, the impact on
public trust.
Public trust in our elections.
On our democratic processes.
The delicate balance.
It really is.
Between freedom of the press and the need to ensure accurate information is being disseminated.
Okay, let's move on to what might be considered the main event.
This is the one I've been waiting for.
The Mueller report.
Yeah.
These excerpts focus on specific actions taken by President Trump that were investigated for potential obstruction of justice.
This is where things get really complicated, right? Presidential power, legal boundaries, ethical considerations.
It's a real tangle.
Tangle indeed.
The report lays out a number of specific actions taken by President Trump that raised some red flags.
Like, for example?
Asking James Comey to drop the Flynn investigation. Trying to fire Robert Mueller himself.
Wow.
Pressuring Jeff Sessions to unrecuse himself. And publicly attacking Michael Cohen.
Those are some serious allegations.
They are.
So what does the report say about whether those actions constitute obstruction of justice?
Well, it examines the arguments for and against.
Right, because it's a complex legal question.
And it delves into these really thorny constitutional issues that arise.
Because you're dealing with a sitting president.
Exactly.
It's uncharted territory in many ways.
It's a real tangled web of legal and political arguments.
And there are no easy answers.
No easy answers.
But the report does a good job of laying out the different perspectives.
It does.
And it's up to us as citizens to engage with those arguments and form our own conclusions.
Okay, now let's transition to a very turbulent period following the 2020 election.
The aftermath, yeah.
Specifically, the events of January 6th.
That was a dark day.
This document, full.pdf, it's the report of the January 6th committee.
A lot of people have been talking about that report.
It provides a really deep dive into that tumultuous time.
What are some of the key findings?
Well, it highlights President Trump's efforts to overturn the election results. His role in assembling the crowd that day.
Right, the rally that preceded the attack.
And his delayed response to the violence that unfolded.
It's a chilling account of what happened.
It is.
And it goes beyond just describing the events.
It analyzes what it means for American democracy.
Right, the implications for the peaceful transfer of power.
It's a sobering reminder of how fragile our democratic institutions can be.
Absolutely.
One detail from the report that really stood out to me.
Yeah, what was that?
The evidence showing that President Trump continued to make certain claims about the election.
Even after he knew they were false?
Even after he knew they were false.
That's troubling.
The report cites specific instances like that phone call with Brad Raffensperger.
Oh, the Georgia Secretary of State.
Where Trump insisted there were thousands of dead people who voted in Georgia.
Even though Raffensperger corrected him.
Raffensperger told him the actual number was 2.
2, not thousands.
And then just a few days later, Trump repeated that false claim about thousands of dead voters.
During his speech on January 6th.
During his speech on January 6th.
It's a perfect example of how misinformation,
even when it's been debunked,
could be weaponized
to sow distrust in our democratic processes.
It's a dangerous game.
The report also highlights the intense pressure that President Trump put on Vice President Pence.
Right, to try and overturn the election result.
Even though Pence had no legal authority to do that.
That pressure campaign is a central theme of the report.
It really is. It details the various legal arguments put forward by Trump's allies.
Like John Eastman.
John Eastman.
And the pressure Pence faced to act on those arguments.
Despite their dubious legal basis.
It was a real constitutional crisis.
It was.
And reading about the threats directed at Pence by the mob on January 6th.
It's chilling.
Chilling, especially knowing how close they came to breaching the Senate chamber.
So let's step back for a second and think about what we've learned from this deep dive so far.
It's been quite a journey.
We've seen how information can be a double-edged sword.
Right. It can be used for good or for bad.
It can be a tool for protecting national security, like with SCIFs. But it can also be a weapon.
A weapon to undermine trust.
To undermine trust in institutions.
Like we saw with the Fox News case.
And the spread of election misinformation.
It's all connected.
Technology plays a huge role in all of this.
It amplifies everything.
It makes it easier to spread misinformation.
And harder to protect sensitive information.
And it's not just about the information itself.
It's about the platforms.
It's about the tools that shape how we access and share information.
And how we interpret it.
We've also seen this ongoing tension.
A constant push and pull.
Between individual rights and government power.
That's a fundamental tension in any democracy.
The challenges of holding those in power accountable.
It's not always easy.
And the fragility of democratic norms.
They can be eroded if we're not careful.
These documents show us how all of these forces play out.
In real-world situations.
With high stakes.
And often unpredictable consequences.
One thing that really stood out to me.
What's that?
Was the courage of those individuals who spoke truth to power.
Yes, those are the heroes.
Like the jurors in the Roger Stone trial.
They were willing to come forward despite their fears.
It takes real courage to do that.
It shows that even in the face of intimidation,
individuals can make a difference.
They can.
And the Mueller report, even though it didn't lead to criminal charges against President Trump, it served as this crucial act of accountability.
By documenting potential abuses of power.
And presenting the evidence to the public.
Transparency is key.
It reminds us that no one is above the law.
And that thorough investigations are essential.
Even when they're politically charged.
Especially when they're politically charged.
Yeah. So where do we go from here?
That's the big question.
What's the key takeaway for you?
For me.
As you continue to explore these topics?
It's about recognizing the immense power of information. Its potential for good and for harm.
That double-edged sword.
Exactly. Yeah. It's about thinking critically, being media literate, and committing to truth and accuracy.
Those are essential skills in today's world.
Absolutely.
We're constantly bombarded with information.
On all sides.
It's about recognizing how interconnected all of these issues are.
Everything is connected.
Juror privacy, government surveillance, election interference.
The future of warfare.
It's all part of a bigger conversation.
About power, technology, and the future of democracy.
And it's a conversation that we all need to be part of.
Absolutely. It's not just for the experts and the policymakers.
We all have a role to play in safeguarding our democracy.
That's right.
Yeah.
Our democracy depends on it.
It really does.
Yeah, it's like if people lose faith in the system, then...
Oh, what's the point?
Exactly. It's a recipe for disillusionment and disengagement.
And that kind of brings us back to January 6th.
Oh, yeah.
This report, it really digs deep into how those protests turned into something so much more dangerous.
It's really disturbing when you read about how certain groups,
yeah,
fueled by misinformation and conspiracy theories, were mobilized and directed towards the Capitol.
Like it wasn't just a spontaneous thing?
No, there was a level of organization there, a clear intent.
That's scary.
It is. It's very concerning to think about how close they came to disrupting the peaceful transfer of power.
And the report makes it clear that this wasn't just about that one day.
No, it was the culmination of a much larger effort.
To undermine faith in the electoral process.
Spread falsehoods, incite violence.
Which brings us back to the power of misinformation.
Or disinformation, as it's often called.
And how it can be used to manipulate and exploit people.
And the speed at which false information can spread online.
It's like trying to put out a wildfire with a garden hose.
It feels that way sometimes.
How do we even begin to address that?
Well, it's a multifaceted problem, so it requires a multi-pronged approach.
Okay, so what are some of the prongs?
One prong is empowering individuals.
To do what?
To be more discerning consumers of information, to develop critical thinking skills.
Okay.
To be aware of the tactics used to spread disinformation.
So media literacy is more important than ever.
Absolutely, but it's not just about individual responsibility.
Oh, what else?
Social media platforms have a huge role to play.
In what way?
In curbing the spread of harmful content, promoting accurate information.
Makes sense.
And of course, holding those in power accountable.
For spreading lies and inciting violence.
That's crucial.
It's a complex web, that's for sure.
It is, but even looking back at the Roger Stone case, there's a glimmer of hope there.
What do you mean?
The jurors, despite their fears, they were willing to speak out.
Right, they were worried about the consequences.
But they did it anyway. That shows the importance of civic duty.
Standing up for what's right, even when it's hard.
Exactly. And the Mueller report, though it didn't result in criminal charges, it still played a vital role.
How so?
It shined a light on potential wrongdoing.
Okay.
It fostered a sense of accountability.
It reminds us that no one is above the law.
And that thorough investigations are essential.
Even when they're politically charged.
Especially when they're politically charged.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have. It's been quite a journey.
From juror privacy to the future of warfare.
From China's ambitions to the attack on the Capitol.
We've explored how information is controlled, manipulated, weaponized.
And we've seen how those forces intersect with questions of power, accountability.
The very foundations of our democracy.
It's a lot to process.
It is. What stands out to you as the most crucial takeaway?
That's a tough one.
What should our listener be pondering?
I think it boils down to this. Be an active participant, not a passive observer.
Okay, so what does that look like?
Engage with information critically.
Be aware of your own biases.
And be willing to challenge those in power. The future of our democracy depends on it.
On an informed and engaged citizenry.
That's right. That's the key.
Yeah, it's easy to feel a little overwhelmed by all of this.
It is. It's a lot to take in.
Where do we even begin to make a difference?
Well, I think it starts with recognizing that our individual actions, even the small ones, they can have a ripple effect.
Like those jurors who spoke out even though they were scared.
Exactly. That took real courage.
It did.
And think about those reporters who keep digging for the truth, even when it puts them at risk. Or the people who are working tirelessly to combat misinformation and promote media literacy.
So it's about finding ways to contribute no matter how big or small our platform.
Precisely. And it's not just about the grand gestures.
Right. What else?
It's about staying informed, engaging in thoughtful discussions, holding our elected officials accountable, supporting organizations that align with our values.
These documents that we've been exploring today, they've opened up this Pandora's box of issues.
They have. It's a lot to grapple with.
It can be daunting, but it's also empowering to realize that we're not powerless.
We're not. We have agency.
We can make a difference.
Absolutely. Every action counts.
It's like we've been on this incredible journey.
A real deep dive.
Uncovering these hidden stories. Grappling with these complex questions.
And while there are no easy answers, the very act of engaging with these issues is a step in the right direction.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive,
what's
the one thing you hope our listener will take away from this?
I would say never underestimate the power of an informed and engaged citizen.
I like that.
Stay curious, keep asking questions.
And never stop seeking the truth.
Exactly. That's the key.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep pushing for a better future.